Hey everyone, welcome to this month Product Ops HQ Meetup. I'm Anna and I'm your host, and I'm so glad you are here with us today. I will give folks another minute or so to join, and while we wait, please say hi in the chat and let us know where you are tuning in from. It's always fun to see how global our communities. And as for me, I'm calling in from Coimbra, Portugal. And also with me today is Leah from Dragon Boat team. She will be in the chat sharing some helpful resources for you and answering any quick questions you might have. Let's see this chat. Denver, Colorado, DC, and I'm seeing more people joining, so we will need to have more time for people to settle in. And if this is your first time joining us, a quick intro about Product Ops HQ. Product Ops HQ is a global community for Product Ops professionals to learn, connect, and share experiences. And we host these monthly meetups to bring you real stories and tips directly from practitioners like you. And today's session is really special because we are discussing how to scale product impact through product operations. And I will have help of two amazing guests that I will be introducing next. But first, a few quick notes. This is a guided conversation, so feel free to chime in via chat because we always love to see your thoughts. But we might not have enough time to address all your questions. So I will invite you to continue the conversation in our Slack community. And I think Leah is going to drop that link for you to join us there if you're not there yet. And yes, we are recording the session, so you will get the replay after the session. Okay, I think we have more people now, but before we dive into the fun part, I would have to say that we wouldn't be here today without the support of our sponsor, Dragon Boat. For those who don't know anything about Dragon Boat is a platform that helps product leaders and their teams make efficient and effective decisions so they can strategize and deliver at AI speed and scale, and it's all powered by portfolio intelligence. They are trusted by thousands of teams at leading enterprises, which one of it is Simpson Strong-Tie. And what I love most is that they are really truly supporters of the Product Ops community. So check out dragonboat.io to learn more. And with that, I think we are all here now. So let's get to the good stuff. I'm really happy to introduce you Patrick Stanko, Senior Technical Manager, Product Operations at Simpson Strong-Tie. And he's going to share a little bit about his journey into scaling product impact at Simpson. And guiding the conversation will be Christian Gregory, Customer Success Leader at Dragon Boat. So many of you already know him from his work with product leaders in this space. So Patrick, Christian, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to this chat. So Christian, I'll pass the mic over to you so you can kick off the conversation.
Yes, perfect. Hey, Anna, thank you for the introduction. I am very excited again to be joined today by our special guest, Patrick Stanko from Simpson Strong-Tie. Patrick has been leading some really innovative approaches to product ops, and we are super excited to dive into his insights with you all today. Now, Patrick, before we jump right in, let's maybe start by having you introduce yourself to our audience. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at Simpson Strong-Tie and how you are enabling product teams over there?
Yeah, for sure. Good morning, everyone. And before I start, I just wanted to say that, Christian, you have a way better headshot than I do. Your smile is fantastic. So we have to work on that on mine. Anyway, again, thanks for having me today. Super excited to be here. Simpson Strong-Tie. So just a little bit of background on us. So we've been in business since about the mid 50s, 1950s. And we are predominantly manufacture fasteners, connectors, et cetera, for the building construction industry. But I sit in the digital solutions group, and I manage the software product operations. So when you think about designing trusses for our homes and you think about some of the project management side of things, estimating and building, what we call BOMs or uh, lists of materials, our solutions, help the construction industry in that respect. But again, I sit on the managing the product operations side of things. So um, for us, I think it's a relatively, let's say about the last year or so, it's been a growing space for us. And one of the things that been trying to do for us is, I might call it a tenant for us, is enablement. And so I think when I think about product ops, one of the biggest things is to enable the product management organization. So when you think about all of the touch points that we might have when we're developing products, I think traditionally there's this intersection between product management, customer success, and development, but there's also the marketing folks, customer support, sales, maybe implementation, those types of things. So from an ops perspective, those are all of what I might call my touch points to think about how might I enable our product management folks with insights from those stakeholders or those constituents, or data, and reporting, et cetera.
Perfect. Patrick, thanks for sharing that. We're very excited to have you here with us today. Now, let's start with the big picture. And I do know that you have a specific product ops framework at Simpson Strong-Tie. So, Patrick, how might you describe that framework that you are using?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for us, one of the things that we're trying to work towards or be mindful of is, while you think about features and deliverables, those things are super important, right? When we're thinking about product development, but we're really trying to focus on what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve versus, say, just strictly the outputs, right? So for us, when I think about our framework, it's there's kind of like three primary tiers, if you will. So we kind of break it down in terms of, we have market goals that we establish right now on an annual basis. And for each one of those, we have product outcomes that each one of our teams is trying to achieve, right? If we understand the highest level goals, we go through an exercise of identifying the outcomes. And with each one of those as well, we have metrics by which we, agree we're going to measure those outcomes, right? Everyone's probably heard that you can't manage what you don't measure, right? So that's one of our, I don't know if I would call it a mantra, but you might. And then that tertiary level is our initiatives, right? So for each of those outcomes, we may have one or more initiatives that we're working towards that we think is going to help us achieve those outcomes. And we represent that too in terms of our tooling. So when you think about how we're managing our portfolio, we have that reflected in the tool as well.
Perfect. Perfect. Patrick, that outcome focused approach definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, implementing any framework does require getting the team actually using the tools and keeping the data current. And I imagine that's one of the biggest challenges that you do face. So, Patrick, how do you get PMs to consistently update data without constant reminders?
It's an art. No, no, I think when I think about reminders, I can't lie. I have at least one reminder that I have to, that goes out to the PMs in terms of, getting data updated. That's a tool. I don't try to overdo that. Um, uh, we also bake in, if you will, in terms of driving consistency with the data. One of the things that there's a couple of key activities that we have, which we reference as our MBRs, which are monthly business reviews. Then we do that at the quarterly basis as well. And what we're trying to do is to set that expectation that we will have our tooling be present or represented or views when we're having those. those meetings, which you can look at as a forcing function of sorts, like say in the sense that, hey, these are the tools we're going to use to explain how we're doing. Therefore, we have to make sure that the data is clean as we lead up to those key activities and key moments. So that's been helpful. In terms of, resistance, or, when you think about rolling out a new tool, that there's challenges there. There's a few times where, I think you and I were chatting about this earlier, where I might cry a little bit, which is totally joking. But I think the point is, or like it can be a challenge. But I think what's important for me is if I'm feeling any resistance, if you will, with rolling something out, I think it's important to um, check yourself in the sense of, hey, is the PMs finding value in this tool or in this process that I might be trying to employ or put forth? Trying to also be really empathetic in terms of, are our PMs, stretched really thin currently? And maybe there's a, peak part of one's season. So trying to be mindful about that in terms of, hey, everybody, here's this new process, here's this thing that we want to try, here's this metric that we want to try to impact in terms of, business operations. So I try to be really mindful of that. And then there's also times when I try to pick up the baton, if you will, for PMs, right? I come from a strict product background myself. I think that's valuable for me in terms of, when I think about empathy and understanding what a PM might be going through. So there's sometimes I will try to, pick up, some of that work for them and say, hey, I'll do this for us right now, just so we can get things going. And then, we'll work together to enable you guys to do it on your own.
Great, great. Patrick, I love the honesty there. And I'm sure that you were able to see positive impacts from that approach and the empathy that you are putting into your day to day. Now, what a spin-off question from that is, what before and after changes did you see after you implemented those processes and cleaned up that data?
Yeah, and I'll say just kind of a larger, kind of broader statement. I would say that we're still evolving our product ops um, discipline and activities, which is really fun for me. Um, when I think about signals, when you put something in place or put something out there for the team to try or not try, I think I look for signals in terms of, one example might be, so in meetings. So early on, we had lots of questions, or meetings ran over when we were conducting an MBR, right? So we put a couple of things in place to kind of streamline the communications. And while I might not be quantitatively, measuring it, I do try to keep an ear and eye out for how many questions are we getting, right? I think there's a lot of times you can, as a signal, if there's a lot of like, hey, can you clarify that? There's lots of clarifying questions being asked. To me, that's a signal that we might have to retool the communications. If meetings go over because of needs for clarity, I think that, to me, that's a signal as well. I think in that same vein, though, I've also seen meetings that have a tendency to go over because there's high engagement. So I think you have to kind of balance that. Um, I think one of the other signals that I look for too, and this could be even one-on-one conversations or in a group, is body language or tonal inflections. I have had the pleasure of working with uh, a program manager years ago, who actually was an interrogator in the military prior to becoming a program manager,
Oh,
and
wow.
they taught a class on how to read body language, tonal inflections. So I use that still today. If you see someone you're trying to, put forth a new process or something, and you see someone's, their arms are folded or their camera goes off, right? To me, those are signals to better understand if this thing that we're putting in place is landing well or not.
That's great. I'm definitely going to keep that in mind, and I'm going to pick your brain about that later for some of those body
Yeah,
language signals.
it's fun. I enjoy that piece a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome, Patrick. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how you do handle the constant stream of requests that every PM deals with. Now, how do you standardize intake without alienating PMs or stakeholders?
Yeah. So for us, the tool, when I think about our tooling, what we have in place today is a form by which our stakeholders can submit requests. So that might be a feature request, expanding on an existing feature. Um, so we have a form that they will submit a request, and based on the product that they select, it gets automatically routed to a product person. And then that person has they get notified through the system, and we've given them the latitude as well. And I think this is something for for PMs and or ops to manage is, while you might receive that request, we give them the latitude to say, hey, given our current strategy or given my current roadmap, you have the latitude to say, hey, I got your request, but for the following reasons, we're not going to pursue that at this time, right? So we give them that mechanism to not just receive and react to every request. We do, ask though that because it's just being a good steward, if you will, is, hey, when you get a request, even though you're not going to pick it up, make sure you respond to that submitter so that they know that they're heard, or they feel like they're heard and they're understood, and then they understand why you may or may not be picking something up. But assuming that it gets through that and the PM wants to explore it a little bit more, then we have a mechanism by which we pull that into our tooling. And right now we're moving towards employing the RICE method. I'm sure folks have heard about that before in terms of, understanding what the reach and the impact and the confidence that the team has uh, to be able to you know build a particular thing. Then understanding what its effort is as well. So we're hoping to use that to help stack rank in terms of, here's all these requests coming in. We want to be able to score those and then be able to have a conversation around that stack ranked list. So, and there's a whole host of different, methods that are out there. But I think if you can, what works for the group in terms of, your method, I might say, starting simple, like a simple weighted matrix, is helpful. But we're moving towards using the RICE method. And what's great for us is that the tool that we're using actually has that baked in as well.
Great, great. So you're saying that you do not prioritize requests based on who's the best body language in your meetings.
No, good question, but no.
Nice, nice. Well,
I don't recommend that.
so Patrick, with that said, I do know, and just working with customers, that one of the trickiest parts of road mapping is just managing all the interconnections between different teams and initiatives across your organization. So how do you handle those dependencies in your roadmap and your request?
Yeah, so one thing that we make sure that we do, and when I think about the request coming in, we do want we want things in the system for which you may be able to tie a request to, and that's for us is simply those at the highest level, those market goals. So as a request comes in, we want to make sure that something you can tie that to it. But when I think about you know, uh, linking those requests and thinking about the dependencies. Um, One of the things that we've been doing as of late is kind of a shared planning exercise. Our tooling has the ability to digitally connect, one thing to another thing in terms of dependencies, which is great. But what I think we're seeing is um, when the group comes together and plans together, um, it's far more collaborative, it's much more dynamic, and you can really knock out a few or a lot of, bigger questions instead of going dark, planning, coming back, and then having to go through a whole host of, of questions. Um, so that's one of the current things that we've been employing.
Okay, great, great. Thanks for going through that with us, Patrick. Now, as as they do go through the scoring and you're ready to start promoting and executing on your roadmap, how do you stay ahead of maybe potential issues? What are some metrics that do reveal roadmap risk early on?
Yeah. And one thing, if I take a half a step back too, is, I think coming out of what I might call your early planning, it's that whole, it's a playback, if you will, right? So as teams are working through their planning, we really invest in going back to even at that a leadership level across because we work in what we call like our tripods. So if you've heard of the tripod operating model, where you've got PM and UX and dev kind of represented. But we make sure that once we go through these initial and preliminary, planning sessions, is to come back together. I kind of think of it as a scrum of scrums. Maybe that's not the best description, but we make sure that, hey, everybody, this is what we is effectively our output right now that we're thinking about for, let's say, the next year. And it's that an additional checks and balance to do a kind of a cross team review. But in terms of, when we think about the roadmap, once you develop it and those risks, um, one of the things that we have in our tooling really supports this well is, so for each of these product outcomes that we might stand up, and we understand how they're tied to the goals, and we understand what initiatives we may be going after, or solutions that we might be going after to solve for those outcomes, is the metrics, right? So again, it's tough to manage what you don't measure. Right. So one of the things that we do is we're moving towards measuring on a really regular cadence. I believe that if you measure something on a regular cadence, you have more data points, so you can actually see trends a little bit sooner than you might not. In the sense of, if you measure something like twice a year, you might be finding out that you're off course late in the game, right? So what we're trying to do is measure on a really tight cadence, so we can course correct if we need to, or identify those risks early. Like we may have something where, you wanted to reach, some number of users by a certain amount of time, but if you're measuring and you're starting to see that, we just deployed, a new release, we're measuring and things are really flat. That's a good, that gives us this ability to potentially react to that sooner than not. Why might not users be engaging with this particular feature or capability?
Okay, great. Well, Patrick, we all know that there is going to be that inevitable need to adjust. So, how do you incorporate the feedback that you're receiving in these sessions into roadmap updates?
Yeah, so again, I mentioned that we have that concept of the MBR and our QBRs. And when we think about those, I think of it as kind of like an aperture of time, right? So the MBR is a little bit more tactical in nature, such that we're looking at a very, small window of time. And uh, on the QPS or QBR side of things, it's a wider, duration of time. But we use those moments to be able to say, hey, here's how we're doing against these particular outcomes for this quarter or for the roadmap. And those are our mechanisms by which we can get feedback. So when you think about incorporating feedback into the roadmap, we use those as points of engagement, if you will, with our key constituents or stakeholders. So our PMs, our product folks can get feedback and then understand how they might have to, either deviate from plan a little bit or think about something a little bit differently. And those have proved to be, I think, really valuable.
Got it. Perfect. Patrick, if you don't mind, let's go back to those group planning sessions for a moment. Because I just see that we are getting a few questions on those. How often are you having those group planning sessions, and who are some of the folks that participate in some of those?
Yeah, the cadence right now is we call it like a mid, and it's relatively new for us, I'll be honest too. So it's a what we're calling like a midterm or mid-year kind of planning. So the idea is you try to look at a potential like a 6-month window of time by which you might want to, solve for certain things. And if you recall, I mentioned that tripod model. So when I think about the participants, I mean, we try to be really open internally with, we don't try to exclude people from attending a particular meeting. But when I think about those core folks that we think should engage or should participate, is really, obviously the product person, your all the devs, your dev lead, and your UX folks, right? I think we've also found that when you have customer support, attending something like that can be super valuable. QA, when I think about a specific discipline, for sure having them there. So, and I don't want to say the more the merrier, but I think generally speaking, I think it's beneficial that you have more voices or more representation there. You'll get a better, you know, you'll cover a wider range of topics or concerns or risks. Um, I think you have to be careful with that too, because I've also seen, instances where depending on how big your team is, right, it can be like diminishing returns, right? You might want to have everybody participating. I think there is a little bit of risk of it just gets potentially too noisy. Um,
Too many
so I don't
cooks in
want,
the kitchen.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to, say that, well, it depends, right? I think that's just an easy response, but I think it's just something to be mindful of. I've seen, moments where maybe start a little smaller in terms of like an audience, and then, you know, I don't know, almost conducting a retro, if you will. Like, how did that go? Like, do we need to increase, the participants? Like, yeah, if we didn't feel like we got great representations from, say, customer support last time, yeah, we've got to make sure that we get them invited next time as well. Um, it's I often hear I'll say businesses, they reference, that they're going through a digital transformation. And I get it. But I will say, me personally, I take pause with transformation. There's something that feels not definitive, but just feels like it has too hard of an endpoint. Like, we transformed. And I like the idea of thinking that we're evolving, right? It's this, we're constantly either trying something new out, getting feedback, iterating a little bit, putting something out there, and learning internally how we're going to get better. So that's one of the things that I've been trying to, when I have, the moments to do so, is to kind of lean in on this idea of we're evolving. You could probably argue either way, but I like evolve versus, transformed. Just feels, yeah, too hard of a stop.
I like it. I like it. And Patrick, I do have another question that's coming through, and it is, what is your specific role in these big group planning sessions?
Yeah, so we have I would say it's light at this point. I mean, we have the luxury of having some help internally with someone who's a little bit closer to the teams, like at a lower level, that's helping to kind of usher that, if you will. So I think, again, my involvement is light, but when I think about that enablement piece, is, making sure that, yeah, that we have that type of an activity or a mechanism that's happening, and then I will, pull people for feedback as well, kind of quietly, to see how things are going, to see if there's areas that we might need to retool or rethink.
Great. Perfect. Patrick, so as we are wrapping up, and I know you've been doing this a long time and you're certainly an expert in the field, what would be, if you could give somebody one piece of advice that you'd want to leave with your fellow product ops peers on here with us today, what would that be?
Yeah. Well, one, I appreciate you referencing me as an expert. I don't know if I'd say that, because I believe that I'm always learning, right? I'm always evolving. So I don't know if we'll ever reach that expert level, but yeah, I've been around the block, a few times. Um, if I was to give one piece of advice, or where I might, spend some time reflecting, is thinking about your operating model. So one of the things that I personally have recognized over the last, few weeks is, um, where I might have an idea of where I want uh, the product or to go in terms of an ops and frameworks. I think I've had to throttle that back a little bit, and be a little bit more mindful of where are we at as a group when you think about varying experiences. Where might we be at culturally, in terms of, operations versus kind of current software development processes. So I think it's great to have an idea of where you want to go, but then understanding where you're at today. And I'm happy to meet with folks, outside of this too, if anyone has any additional questions. But one of the things that we'll be doing here shortly is another, what I call like a maturity model check. There's probably a better term for it, but across a handful of different dimensions, we'll go through and say, hey, of all these different dimensions, when we think about product management or ops, itself, is to understand what the dimensions are and then score them in terms of maturity. Let's say our communications right now, we want them to be a 5, right? And we score it, and we're like, we're a 2.5 right now. We average the scores or what have you. And then I think that gives you an opportunity to understand, obviously, where you're at, where you want to get to, but then it can help drive that conversation of, okay, how might we go from a 2.5 to a 4 or a 2.5 to 3 by the end of H1 next year, whatever that situation might be. So again, understanding where you want to go, framework wise, understanding where you're at today, and then consider some mechanism by which you can measure yourself to better manage yourself and the group. So that's been really helpful as of late.
That's great, Patrick. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
This has definitely been incredibly valuable. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
you're very welcome. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been super fun.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Patrick and Christian. This was really fantastic. And lots of practical gems in there. So we will need to wrap up a little bit earlier today, but let me just share my screen really quick. So for everyone else, please don't let this conversation end here. You can jump into our Slack to keep the chat going, and we will try to address those unanswered questions in the Slack as well. Leah is dropping that link for you in the chat. And as Patrick mentioned, you can also connect with him on LinkedIn. Here's the link to do that. And what else? Yeah, I have just one final heads up. So next month we will skipping the usual meetup because we got something even bigger. We have the virtual summit by Dragonboat, Accelerate, happening on September 25. And there's a whole product ops track with names that you really want to check out and hear from, like Denise Steels and Mariel Valander and other product leaders. So it's free, and I think it's going to be a great event. So make sure you grab your spot there. Okay, I think that's all for today. Thank you once again to our amazing guest speakers. Patrick, Christian, thank you for sharing those insights, and thank you all for spending your time with us today. I'll see you all in Slack and hopefully at Accelerate. So have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Ciao.